Titanic last night. On the evening of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic moved steadily westward through the North Atlantic, unaware that this night would define her place in history. After sunset, the final traces of daylight faded completely, and the sky opened into a vast, moonless darkness. There was no moon to soften the night, only countless stars scattered across the heavens, sharp and distant, shining with unusual clarity. The Atlantic below was unnaturally calm. The water lay smooth and dark, barely disturbed by the ship's passage. Sailors would later describe the sea as like glass, a rare and deceptive condition in these waters. There was no wind, no rolling swell, and no sound beyond the low, steady pulse of the engines deep within the hull. The stillness created a quiet confidence, as though the ocean itself had fallen asleep. From the open decks, the night felt peaceful rather than threatening. The cold air was crisp but gentle, settling softly against coats and collars. Stars reflected faintly on the black surface of the sea, broken only by the ship's long wake. Nothing interrupted the horizon. No waves shimmered. No shapes emerged from the darkness. The Titanic seemed alone, suspended between sky and water, moving forward through silence. Inside the ship, life continued in quiet comfort. Electric lights softened the corridors, and warmth filled the public rooms. To those aboard, this night felt no different from any other. It was calm, orderly, and reassuring. As the Titanic pressed onward into the darkness, no one sensed that this same calm, so complete and soothing, was quietly setting the stage for what would follow. As the evening turned toward night, the atmosphere inside the Titanic remained relaxed and unhurried. In first-class lounges, small groups lingered in deep armchairs, their conversations slowing as the hour grew late. Gentle laughter echoed briefly, then faded. A final drink was finished. A book was closed and set aside. In the cabins, lamps cast warm pools of light across polished wood and neatly arranged furnishings. Passengers prepared for sleep with the easy confidence of people who believe themselves safe. Coats were folded. Shoes were placed beside beds. The steady rhythm of the engines became a familiar lullaby, constant and reassuring. For many aboard, the Titanic felt less like a ship and more like a floating city, solid, modern, and immune to danger. She was the largest moving object ever built by human hands. She was equipped with advanced technology, watertight compartments, and a reputation for near invincibility. The idea that this vessel could be seriously threatened felt distant, almost absurd. Below decks, in the wireless room, the night unfolded differently. Operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride worked continuously at the Marconi set, sending and receiving messages without pause. Passenger telegrams demanded priority, personal notes, business matters, words meant to arrive before landfall. Among them were ice warnings from other ships, reporting large fields of ice and drifting bergs. Some of these warnings were passed to the bridge. Others were delayed, set aside amid the constant flow of traffic. None were treated as urgent. Ice in the North Atlantic was expected in April. The ship's speed remained unchanged, and confidence held firm. High above the bow, in the crow's nest, lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee stood against the cold. The air was sharp, biting through layers of clothing. Their eyes scanned the darkness ahead, searching for any sign of danger. They had no binoculars. A simple oversight before departure had left the crow's nest without them. The key had been misplaced during a last-minute change of officers. It was a small detail, one that seemed insignificant at the time. But it forced the lookouts to rely entirely on their unaided vision. The conditions that night made ice especially difficult to see. Without moonlight, there were no shadows to give shape to an iceberg. The calm sea produced no breaking waves at its base, no white foam to catch the eye. Ice lay silent and invisible, blending seamlessly into the darkness. Minutes passed slowly. The Titanic cut forward through the night at over 20 knots. Below, passengers slept or talked quietly, unaware that safety now depended on a narrow margin of distance, timing, and human perception. At 11:40 p.m., a pale shape appeared suddenly in the darkness ahead. Fleet recognized it instantly. He struck the warning bell 3 times and reached for the telephone to the bridge. His message was brief and urgent. Iceberg. Right ahead. On the bridge, First Officer William Murdoch reacted immediately. Orders were given to turn hard to starboard and to stop and reverse the engines. The response was swift, but the Titanic was immense, and her momentum could not be undone in seconds. For a brief moment, it seemed the ship might avoid disaster. The bow began to swing. The iceberg slid past, just clear of a direct collision. But beneath the surface, the danger was far greater than what could be seen. The submerged edge of the iceberg scraped along the hull, tearing open a series of compartments below the waterline. Inside the ship, a deep, grinding vibration passed through steel and bone. Most passengers felt only a mild disturbance. Glasses rattled. Some noticed a faint shudder beneath their feet. A few paused, puzzled, then continued with what they were doing. There was no crash, no panic, no immediate sense of danger. In those quiet seconds, the ship's fate was already sealed. In the minutes that followed, officers and engineers began to assess the damage. Thomas Andrews, the Titanic's designer, moved methodically through the ship, inspecting the flooding firsthand. Water was pouring into multiple compartments, rising steadily with each passing moment. The Titanic had been designed to survive with 4 flooded compartments. 5 were already compromised. When Andrews delivered his conclusion to Captain Edward Smith, there was no dramatics, no raised voices. The reality was simple and devastating. The ship would sink. Still, the atmosphere aboard remained strangely calm. Stewards knocked gently on cabin doors, asking passengers to dress warmly and put on life jackets. The request was framed as a precaution. Many passengers questioned it. Some laughed. Others hesitated. The lights remained bright. The decks were nearly level. Nothing on the surface suggested immediate danger. The illusion of safety endured, even as the water continued its silent advance below. As lifeboats were uncovered, uncertainty slowed the evacuation. Some passengers were reluctant to leave the warmth and stability of the ship for small boats lowered into darkness. Others believed there would be time later that the situation was under control. Several lifeboats were lowered half empty. Rules called for women and children first, but enforcement varied. Confusion mingled with calm, and precious minutes slipped away. Below decks, engineers worked tirelessly to keep the power running. Steam valves were managed. Pumps were monitored. Every light that stayed on bought time for someone else to escape. Their work was unseen by most, but without it, the night would have ended far sooner. After 1 o'clock, denial began to fade. Water reached the forward decks, and the ship's tilt became impossible to ignore. Passengers gathered on deck, watching the sea creep closer with quiet disbelief. Families were separated gently. Farewells were spoken in hushed voices, often without certainty of reunion. Some remained calm. Others stood frozen, unable to fully accept what was happening. The band continued to play. Music drifted across the deck, steady and composed, offering a strange sense of order amid the growing chaos. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was simply there, filling the silence. By around 2:15 a.m., the bow slipped beneath the surface. The stern rose high into the night sky, silhouetted against the stars. Moments later, the lights flickered and went out. With a final, thunderous sound, the Titanic broke apart and vanished into the freezing Atlantic. That night, the ocean claimed more than a ship. It took dreams, hopes, and futures that had only just begun. The number of lives lost can be counted, but the weight of what vanished cannot. Each person aboard carried plans, expectations, and quiet ambitions. All of them disappeared into the dark water, along with the Titanic herself. And for those who survived, the memory of that night lived on. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly, heavily, and forever.